Today, we're going to start leadership as a topic within this course, which will remain the topic for the rest of the semester. Ask yourself, who do you think of as a leader? Who is a leader in your life? Who is a leader throughout history? Oftentimes, when asked these questions, people respond with individuals who are in positions of authority, such as teachers or other club members, or historical figures such as presidents. These are all examples of leadership. And today we're going to explore the history and definition of leadership a bit more to see whether or not, once you learn the basics of leadership, you would see leadership through a different lens or identify different leaders. Throughout the rest of the semester, we will discuss leadership theories, concepts, and topics related to leadership research and leadership studies. Over the last century, the way we define leadership has evolved, which has impacted a shift in practice and education. From the 1900s to 1929, leadership was defined with an emphasis on control and centralization of power, with a common theme of dominance. Leaders led others and expected obedience, respect, loyalty, and cooperation from their followers. In the 1930s, the trait approach emerged with a focus on influence rather than domination. However, leadership was still defined as a group of traits that individuals were born with. We often refer to this as the great man theory. Someone is born a leader, and that is who they are, and how they become a leader is through the assignment at birth of specific character traits such as charisma. FDR is often considered a born leader or great man. In the 1940s, brought on the group approach to leadership. Definitions began to focus on the role of leaders in directing groups. In the 1950s, this group concept continued to evolve, and leadership began to be viewed from the perspective of what leaders do in groups and how they influence the overall success of those groups. Leadership began to be viewed as a behavior in the 1960s, when we began to describe leadership as acts individuals do to influence others in a shared direction. In the 1970s, our focus moved to the organizational behavior approach, where leadership was viewed as a process of mobilizing individuals with certain motives or values. This primarily focused on how individuals come together and seek guidance to work towards their shared goals. Transition into the 1980s resulted in an explosion of leadership research. It became the new hot topic that individuals wanted to explore and learn more about. This began with the onset of traits being looked at as learned skills rather than birth assigned, and resulted in transformational theories of leadership. These transformational theories of leadership examined leadership as one where leaders and followers could raise one another to a higher level of motivation and morality. In the 21st century, we began defining leadership as a process. This view gave way to authentic, spiritual, servant, and adaptive leadership views. We'll discuss all of these leadership topics and the history of leadership more in depth throughout the semester. They're all focused on specific types of leadership with specific groups. Now I'd like for you to think about how you would conceptualize leadership. How do you define leadership? Take a few seconds to write down your definitions so that you can see whether or not your definition packs up with where we're headed with leadership today. Conceptualizing leadership, most commonly, the definitions include the focus of group processes, a personality perspective, an act or a behavior, the power relationship between leaders and followers, a transformational process, and/or a skills perspective. Many of the definitions include these key views. However, there is no true definition of leadership. Nordhaus and his colleagues agree that leadership definitions should all include 4 key components, but do not all need to be the same. In basic sense, leadership should be defined as a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. Your definitions might vary a bit, and it's okay to add your own personal flair. However, Nordhaus and his other leadership colleague experts agree that these 4 components should be included at the basis of all definitions. The first is that leadership is a process. It is not a person, and it is not an act or a behavior. Leadership is a process in which someone engages in, and it's ongoing. They have to involve influence. If you're not influencing someone else, who are you leading? There must be a group. We need a group to influence and to work with during leadership. And a common goal. If you are not sharing a common goal, you are not engaged in leadership. What are you working towards with other individuals if you do not share a common goal? We just outlined leadership, that it includes a process, involves influence, has a group context, and should have common goals. However, often we ask individuals to define leadership and they begin to describe leaders. Leaders are involved in leadership, but it is about the process and not the person. However, when discussing leaders, it's important to remember that leaders should include their followers with them, need their followers, show their appreciation, and let their followers lead at times. We'll discuss shared leadership when the leader switches between individuals and different people later in this course. The leader is often the individual who initiates and maintains the relationship. They uphold the responsibility of keeping the group together and moving towards a shared goal. However, they do not see themselves as above or beyond their followers. They see themselves as equals in achieving their goals. We discuss leadership moving forward in this lesson. We'll discuss the trait versus the process, assigned versus emergent leadership, leadership and power, leadership and coercion, and leadership and management. The trait perspective suggests that certain individuals have special innate or inborn characteristics or qualities that make them leaders, and that it is these qualities that differentiate them from non-leaders. Some of these traits include things such as unique physical factors, such as height, personality features, such as extroversion or charisma, or other characteristics such as intelligence. The trait process varies from the process of leadership as it places importance on born traits rather than learned traits, and implies that leadership cannot be observed in behaviors, but rather through the traits one has prior to engaging in leadership. Some people are leaders because of the formal position that they hold, while others are because of the way individuals respond to them. These are known as assigned and emergent leaders. Assigned leadership is based on occupying a position in an organization where leadership is assigned. Club leaders, plant managers, department heads, directors, and other administrators are examples of assigned leaders. Emergent leadership is when someone is perceived as the most influential member of a group or organization. Regardless of their title, the person is exhibiting emergent leadership. This often occurs due to communication behaviors and personality, which plays a large role in becoming an emergent leader. How trustworthy people see individuals also impacts emergent leadership, and gender has often been seen as a barrier for women in emergent leadership. Power is related to leadership is due in part to the relationship of influence on others. Power is defined as the capacity or potential someone has to influence others. It's their ability to affect others' beliefs, attitudes, and actions, and it results in someone taking a different course of action. Can you think of anyone who might have power over others? I'm sure you can think of someone who has power over you. This might include a teacher, a supervisor, a coach, a minister, or any other one who often holds power. There are 6 primary bases of power that we'll discuss in the next upcoming slide. However, it's important to remember as we discuss this that power is not always a negative thing, but rather it's just always existent. There are 6 primary bases of social power. The first is reverent power. Reverent power is derived from someone being seen as likable. This might be someone's favorite teacher, or it could be a minister. Expert power is someone who's knowledgeable or viewed as knowledgeable about a specific topic. For instance, I have a PhD in leadership and community education. Therefore, you most likely would give me expert power in assuming that I know something about leadership or community education. Legitimate power is power that is derived from a position. This is someone who might be the town mayor or the president of the university. Reward power is power that exists because someone has the ability to give you a reward for a job well done. For instance, your supervisor might hold reward power if they have reward structures at work. Coercive power is power that is existence because someone can punish you or take something away. Coercive power can be seen as a supervisor who has the ability to fire you, or oftentimes coercive power is used to take away individuals' prior needs and make them act out in negative ways. Finally, information power is the last base of social power. And information power exists when someone has information that would help other individuals and they have exclusive access to that. For instance, how transparent your town is is how much informational power they're willing to give up to individuals that live there. Two types of power. The first is positional power. It's derived from an office or a rank that you have in an organization. That legitimate, reward, coercive, and information are most often positional power. However, the position can also be derived from personal power. Personal power is derived from being seen as likable and knowledgeable. Therefore, reverent and expert power are most commonly known as personal power. It's hard to talk about leadership and not talk about coercion. Oftentimes, negative leadership behaviors are related to coercive behaviors. Coercion involves the use of force to effect change. To coerce means to influence others to do something against their will and may include manipulating penalties and rewards in their work environment. It often involves threats, punishments, and negative rewards. Throughout history, we have seen leaders who use this type of power and restraint to force their followers to engage in extreme behavior. Can you think of an example of this? These three individuals are Hitler, Jim Jones, and the Taliban. They are all examples of coercive leaders. Do you know what they each did? Well, Hitler is probably most commonly known, and he used coercion and fear to cause his followers to engage in the mass killing of thousands. Jim Jones used his charisma to create a large group of followers who gave up everything for him and followed him south to South America. There, without any worldly possessions and access to food or necessities, he was able to coerce his followers into doing anything he asked. He eventually gave them all cyanide to drink, which resulted in their deaths. This is where the saying, "drink the Kool-Aid," came from. Finally, the Taliban leaders are most recent in our history, and they use coercive behaviors to also rule the majority of Afghanistan. They were known to train their leaders to use coercive behaviors and inflict pain on those who did not listen or respect the strict interpretation of Islamic law. One of the things that's most interesting about these three leaders, or the Taliban leaders in general, is that they did not all start from a place where the intentions were to be coercive, but rather too much power gave way to coercive behaviors coming out. Leadership and management are similar but are not equal. All leaders should be managers, but not all managers are leaders. Leadership involves influence, working with people, and reaching goals, as does management. However, management is utilized to help organizations run more efficiently and effectively, and involves staffing, planning, organizing, and controlling. So what is the primary difference? Managers provide order and consistency, while leaders produce change and movement. Managers have unidirectional authority, which means they hold the power over those they work with. Most commonly, managers are reactive to problems, prefer to work with people solving, and have a low emotional involvement, meaning that they want to put the right people in place to solve the problem, but do not want to be emotionally involved. They delegate jobs and are concerned with coordinating activities to get the job done. Leaders have multi-directional influence and allow their followers to step into leadership positions. They see the need to be both a leader and a follower. They are emotionally active and involved when working with their followers and see their role to support people, not just do the job effectively. They respond to ideas and are proactive. They work to expand available options rather than just stick with the status quo. They look for positive change. They also think the way people think about what is possible. They help individuals see that they're able to accomplish more through innovative practices. Overall, as previously stated, every good leader is also a manager, but not all good managers are leaders. It depends on the needs of the position and the company as to whether leadership or management is needed. This is the conclusion of today's lesson.